The Inclusa was a charitable institution for abandoned babies, and in 1807 it opened its doors in a large old house located here in this space. The institution had been founded 2 centuries earlier and eventually took in about 1,000 babies a year. Some had been abandoned in the neighbouring maternity home and others in the foundling wheels that were distributed across Madrid. According to its statutes, the purpose of the Inclusa was to prevent infanticide and protect maternal honour and to rescue all illegitimate babies. Although it had sometimes taken in babies that had been abandoned temporarily or had found homes for abandoned babies among families in the neighbourhood in return for a small amount of money, this building was constructed with the aim of housing them until they were 7 years old. However, if one thing defined such institutions, it was their high infant mortality rate. In line with the morality of the times, the poor health of children conceived out of wedlock was considered a result of the moral weakness of the parents, and particularly of the mother. The wet nurses at the Inclusa are a clear example of how care has historically been entrusted to women, especially to those from poorer sections of society who hired their breastfeeding services to others. This mercenary breastfeeding, as it was known in Spain, was a widespread custom among the middle and upper classes and was particularly popular in the 19th century. Families who wanted a wet nurse only had to respond to an advertisement in the newspaper, go to an agency, or hire them directly from among the women that could be found in the Plaza Santa Cruz. Cantabrian wet nurses were considered a luxury item for display, but their popularity meant that they were hard to come by, and therefore rarely worked in orphanages or foundling homes. In addition, the working conditions of wet nurses in the Inclusa were poor, not only because of the risk of disease, but also due to the low wages. In exchange for 2 reales a day and food and board, wet nurses were expected to suckle up to 3 babies until these were sent to an external wet nurse in a village close to Madrid to ensure their survival. However, the conditions for external wet nurses were no better. In the late 19th century, the Madrid press published that they were owed up to 28 months' payment. The newspapers protested that non-payment dissuaded many women from working as wet nurses, overburdened the existing ones, and increased infant mortality. Described by the press as a massacre of Herodian proportions, this discovery provoked a huge scandal, and as a result, the first legislation passed in Spain to protect infant children in 1904 focused primarily on regulating the work of wet nurses. However, the early 20th century also witnessed a decline in the use of wet nurses due to the emergence of public health services, advances in pharmaceuticals, and especially the design of feeding bottles. The fight against infant mortality centered on maternal breastfeeding, focusing on mothers as primarily responsible for infant survival. This change in medical ideas was consistent with middle-class ideals that saw motherhood as defining women, and in a small way helped to improve the image of single mothers and abandoned babies. Breastfeeding was also promoted by local institutions, such as those known as the gotas de leche, in English, drops of milk, which were clinics for nursing infants. But as the main representative of such institutions, the Inclusa in Madrid became the centre of debate on infant care, how it should be paid, and its impact on women's lives.